September 15th, 1967. The night Johnny Carson first walked into Romano's restaurant in Burbank. Betty Thompson was just trying to make it through another dinner shift. She had no idea that this charming man in a perfectly tailored suit, unwinding from his Tonight Show taping, would become her most loyal customer, or that his simple act of gratitude would fund the most beautiful dream she'd ever imagined. This isn't just a story about a television legend and a waitress. It's about how two people from different worlds found comfort in routine and friendship during the golden age of television, and how one woman's quarter-century of faith would create something that continues to touch lives today. Romano's restaurant in Burbank was perfectly positioned to catch the after-work crowd from NBC studios. It wasn't fancy red vinyl booths, checkered tablecloths, and simple Italian-American food, but it was warm, reliable, and open late enough for television people who worked unusual hours. Betty Thompson had been waiting tables there for 3 years, serving everyone from camera operators to network executives. At 32, she was a single mother raising her 8-year-old daughter, working evenings so she could be home when Sarah got out of school. It was 11:15 p.m. when Johnny Carson walked through the front door. Betty recognized him immediately. Everyone in America knew that face, that smile, that perfectly styled hair. He'd been hosting The Tonight Show for 5 years, but seeing him in person was still startling. "Good evening," Johnny said to the hostess. "Table for one, please. Somewhere quiet, if you have it." Betty watched from across the dining room as he was seated in booth 12. There was something different about seeing him without the cameras, without the audience. He looked tired, but in a satisfied way, like someone who just finished a job well done. "I'll take booth 12. Betty told her manager. Something about Johnny's gentle demeanor made her want to provide good service. "Good evening, Mr. Carson," Betty said as she approached with water and a menu. "Welcome to Romano's." Johnny looked up with that famous smile, but it was softer than the one America saw on television. "Please just call me Johnny, and thank you. This place has a nice feeling to it. Can I start you with something to drink? Coffee, please. And maybe you could recommend something. I'm not familiar with your menu, but I'm told you have excellent Italian food." Betty found herself relaxing. Despite his fame, Johnny was asking for her opinion, like any other customer. "The V Piegana is wonderful, and the pasta is all made fresh. But if you're looking for something lighter after a long day, the chicken piccata is perfect." The chicken piccata sounds ideal. "Thank you for the recommendation." As Betty served Johnny throughout the evening, they talked about simple things: the weather, the restaurant, life in Burbank. Johnny asked about her daughter, her work, her dreams. He listened with genuine interest, making her feel like the most important person in the room. "You know," Johnny said as he finished his meal, "I think I found my new favorite restaurant." When he paid the check, Johnny left a $50 tip on a $20 meal. "Carson, Johnny, this is too much," Betty protested. "Betty, you made me feel like a human being instead of a television personality. That's worth more than money." As he walked toward the door, Johnny turned back. "Would it be all right if I came back sometime? When I'm in the neighborhood, booth 12 will be waiting for you." Betty smiled. Neither of them knew that Johnny Carson had just found his refuge for the next 25 years. 3 nights later, Johnny returned, and 3 nights after that. Soon a pattern emerged that would define both their lives for the next quarter century. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night is Tonight Show taping days. Johnny would arrive at Romano's around 11 p.m., always booth 12, always asking for Betty, always ordering simple, comforting food. "How was the show tonight?" became Betty's standard greeting. "Better when I know I have this to look forward to," became Johnny's standard reply. Betty began to understand that for Johnny, Romano's wasn't just a restaurant. It was a decompression chamber. After 3 hours of being on for millions of viewers, he needed a place where he could just be himself. "You know what I love about this place?" Johnny said one evening in 1969. "Nobody asked me to tell jokes. Nobody wants autographs. I can just eat dinner and have a normal conversation." "Is that unusual for you?" Betty asked. "More than you might think. Most places I go, people expect me to be Johnny Carson all the time. Here, I can just be John." Betty treasured these conversations. Johnny shared stories about his childhood in Nebraska, his early days in radio, his dreams beyond television. She told him about Sarah's progress in school, her own hopes of someday opening a children's bookstore, her love of reading. You should do it. Johnny encouraged her during one of their talks in 1971. Open that bookstore. The world needs more people who care about children's education. Someday, Betty said wistfully. When I save enough money that night, Johnny left a $100 tip with a note for the future bookstore. Dreams don't work unless we do. After Johnny left, Betty sat alone in the empty restaurant and made a decision that would define the next 21 years of her life. Betty went home that night and found an old silver coffee tin in her kitchen cabinet. She carefully placed Johnny's tip inside and whispered a promise to herself. Every dollar Johnny gives me, I'm saving it, not for myself, but for something special, something that honors what he believes in. Week after week, month after month, year after year, Betty faithfully saved every tip Johnny left. She never spent a penny, never told anyone about her secret fund. She just had faith that someday she would know what it was for. As the Tonight Show grew into a cultural institution, Johnny's visits to Romano's became more precious to him. The restaurant was his sanctuary from the pressures of fame, the place where he could eat a quiet dinner and remember who he was before he became America's host. 30 years from now, Johnny said during one of the conversations in 1975, people won't remember most of the jokes I told or the guests I interviewed, but maybe they'll remember that television can bring people together, that laughter can heal, that education matters. You do more than entertain people, Betty told him. You help them end their day with a smile. That's a gift. The silver coffee tin was getting heavy by then, filled with 8 years of Johnny's generosity. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Betty watched Johnny navigate the changing landscape of television and American culture. She was there for his career triumphs, his personal struggles, his quiet moments of reflection about legacy and meaning. Sometimes, I wonder what I'll be remembered for. Johnny confided one evening in 1982, during his 20th year hosting The Tonight Show. I've told 10,000 jokes, interviewed 5,000 guests. But what really matters? You matter, Betty said simply. You've brought joy to millions of people. You've given them something to look forward to every night. That's not small. That's everything. Johnny looked at her with gratitude. You have a way of putting things in perspective, Betty. That's a rare gift. By this time, Sarah had grown up and moved away, but she always asked about Mr. Johnny when she called. Johnny never forgot to ask about her, celebrating her college graduation, her marriage, her own children. You raised a wonderful daughter. Johnny told Betty, she's a credit to you. She learned kindness by watching how you treat people. Betty replied, you've been a good influence on both of us. The coffee tin was very heavy now, filled with 15 years of saved tips and dreams. In the late 1980s, Betty began to understand what her secret fund was meant to become. During their conversations, Johnny often talked about education, about the importance of reading, about giving children the tools they needed to succeed. You know what breaks my heart? Johnny said one evening in 1988, kids who grow up without access to books, without anyone reading to them, without discovering the magic of stories. Television is entertainment, but books change lives. Betty's pulse quickened. What would help those children? A place, Johnny said thoughtfully, somewhere beautiful and welcoming, where kids could discover books, where parents could read with their children, where stories come alive. Not just a library, a place that makes reading feel like an adventure. That night, Johnny left his usual generous tip, but Betty's mind was racing. She was beginning to understand what 21 years of saving had been preparing her for. What if someone wanted to create a place like that? Betty asked during Johnny's next visit. Hypothetically speaking, Johnny's eyes lit up. I'd say that person would be creating something more valuable than gold. Children who love reading become adults who can change the world. The coffee tin was almost too heavy to lift now. On May 22, 1992, Johnny Carson announced his retirement from The Tonight Show. After 30 years, America's beloved host was saying goodbye. That night, Johnny came to Romano's for what would be one of his last regular visits. Betty could see the mixture of emotions in his face. relief, sadness, uncertainty about the future. "It's time," Johnny said simply. 30 years is a good run. Time to let someone else take the stage. "What will you do now?" Betty asked. "I'm not sure yet. Travel, maybe. Spend time with my family. Figure out what comes after being Johnny Carson." Betty felt her heart racing. If Johnny was retiring, if this chapter was ending, then maybe it was time for her secret to be revealed. "Johnny," she said carefully, "I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone." She led him to the back office of the restaurant and brought out the silver coffee tin, now impossibly heavy, with 25 years of saved tips. "Every dollar you've ever left me is in this tin," Betty said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Every single one. I saved it all, because I felt like it was meant for something important." Johnny stared at the tin in amazement. "Betty, why would you do that? You could have used that money for yourself, for Sarah, because you taught me that the best gifts are the ones that keep giving. Tonight, when you talk about children and books and reading, I finally understood what this money was for." Betty's voice grew stronger. "I want to use every penny you ever gave me to build the most beautiful children's reading center in Burbank, a place where kids can discover the magic of books, where families can read together, where stories come alive." Tears filled Johnny's eyes. "Betty, do you know what you're saying?" "I'm saying that Johnny Carson's generosity is going to help children fall in love with reading for generations to come." Johnny was quiet for a long time. Then he reached for his checkbook. "If you're willing to match your faith with my gratitude, let's build something really special." When he finished writing, the check brought their total to $500,000. "Now we can build a place that will make reading feel like magic." The Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center broke ground in Burbank 6 months later. It would be a 5,000-square-foot wonderland designed specifically for children, cozy reading nooks, interactive story areas, a small theater for storytelling, and thousands of books for every age and interest. But more than just a facility, it would be a community hub where families could bond over books, where children could discover that reading was an adventure, and where the love of learning would be nurtured and celebrated. Johnny uses connections to bring in children's authors for readings, educational experts to design programs, and celebrities to participate in special events. Betty managed the daily operations, treating every child who walked through the doors like her own grandchild. "This place represents something beautiful," Johnny said at the center's opening ceremony in 1993. "It's proof that when one person's generosity meets another person's faith, magic happens." The plaque by the entrance read, "Built with love by Betty Thompson and Johnny Carson, because every child deserves to discover the magic of reading." The Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center quickly became a beloved institution in Burbank. Children who had never shown interest in books became voracious readers. Families who had never read together made it a nightly tradition. The Sense programs expanded to include literacy tutoring, summer reading camps, and author visit programs. Betty, now in her late 50s, found her life's calling managing the center. She watched thousands of children discover the joy of reading, many of them going on to academic success they might never have achieved otherwise. Johnny visited regularly, always delighting children with his gentle humor and genuine interest in their favorite books. He funded additional programs, purchased new books, and ensured the center would have permanent endowment funding. "You know what the best part of this is?" Johnny told Betty during one of his visits in 1995. "These kids don't know me as a TV host. To them, I'm just Mr. Johnny who likes books. That's exactly how I want to be remembered." Sarah, now a mother herself, brought her own children to the reading center. "Mom," she said to Betty, "you saved more than money all those years. You saved dreams." When Johnny Carson passed away in 2005, the Reading Center held a special memorial celebration. Hundreds of families whose lives had been touched by the center gathered to honor the man who had made it possible. But the most meaningful tribute came from the children themselves. Handwritten letters, drawings, and stories about how books had changed their lives. All because a TV host and a waitress had believed in the power of reading. Betty, now in her 70s, continued to run the center until her retirement in 2010. Under her leadership, It had served over 15,000 children and their families, creating a culture of reading that rippled out into the entire community. Today, the Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center continues to thrive. Now run by Sarah and her daughter, it has expanded to include digital literacy programs, STEM reading initiatives, and partnerships with local schools. The original silver coffee tin sits in a place of honor in the Sense lobby, empty now, but still inspiring visitors. A small plaque beside it reads, "Faith plus patience plus love equals sign magic." Betty Thompson, now 89, still volunteers at the Reading Center every week. She often sits in the children's section, watching new generations discover the joy of books, remembering the quiet conversations with Johnny that started it all. People ask me if I ever regretted not spending that money on myself. Betty reflects from her favorite chair in the center, but they don't understand. I did spend it on myself. Every child who learns to love reading, every family that bonds over books, every dream that comes true because someone learned to read, that's all part of me now. The center has inspired similar programs in other cities, proving that the combination of celebrity, generosity, and quiet faith can create lasting change. Over 50,000 children have now participated in programs modeled after the Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center. When children ask Betty why she saved all that money instead of spending it, she gives them the same answer she gave Johnny Carson 25 years ago. Because the most beautiful things in life are worth waiting for, and they're always better when they're shared. Johnny believed that education could change the world. I believed in Johnny. Together, we proved that both of us were right. The Tonight Show ended over 30 years ago, but Johnny Carson's legacy lives on every time a child opens a book for the first time, every time a family discovers the joy of reading together, every time someone learns that knowledge is the greatest gift of all. Sometimes the most important conversations happen not in front of millions of viewers, but across a dinner table at 11 p.m. between two people who understand that kindness, patience, and faith can create something more lasting than fame. They can create hope one story at a time. Betty Thompson never spent a single dollar of Johnny Carson's tips because she understood something profound about generosity. The greatest gifts are the ones that teach others to give. For 25 years, every tip was an expression of gratitude from America's most beloved host to a woman who made him feel human. Every saved dollar was an act of faith, from a waitress who believed that good things come to those who wait for the right moment to act. Together, they created something that neither could have built alone. A place where children learn that reading is magic, where families discover that books bring them closer together, and where a community learn that education is the foundation of every dream. The Johnny Carson Children's Reading Center stands as proof that success shared becomes success multiplied. Every child who graduates from college, every family that bonds over books, every life that's changed through literacy can be traced back to a simple decision to save every blessing until it becomes big enough to bless an entire community. And in the quiet moments between stories when the center is full of children reading and families sharing books, you can almost hear the echo of Johnny Carson's gentle laughter and Betty Thompson's quiet faith, reminding us all that the most beautiful magic happens when we believe in each other's dreams.